This is the infrastructure project known as NAWAPA, the North American Water and Power Alliance. So the first statement is you're talking about taking the massive amount of runoff water that we get each year off the coast of Alaska, because you have a water cycle pumping water up off the oceans onto land, which doesn't reach certain key regions in the Americas. These desert areas here are largely untouched by the water cycle that pumps off of land. What it does touch, it was able to touch because of the motion of plant life onto land some hundreds of million years ago, back during the period where you first saw the motion of plant life and animal life onto land. They brought these water cycles and ocean cycles. But certain areas have either been left entirely untouched or, because of the vicissitudes of time, have lost their ability to maintain irrigation. These have become desert areas. Other areas have suffered imbalance of too much water, such as the areas you're getting in Alaska and along the western coast of Canada, where there's plenty of fresh water, which runs off immediately into the oceans, is immediately lost as salt water again, without taking part in any kind of useful cycles. We've proposed the massive project capturing that wastewater and bringing it down to finish the job it was and should be intended to do, which is the irrigation of this entire region here, the North American desert. Now, you're doing a couple of things with this. One is the necessary transformation of the biosphere in the way that only the human species would be capable of doing it, giving an upgrade, repairing the mistakes that were made, the areas that were sort of missed by plant life. In the process, doing a number of other things, replenishing the Great Lakes, which have been depleting slowly over the last period, and create navigable areas to finally connect regions of Canada that have never been connected, and create a new passage from the Pacific to the Atlantic to link up these bodies of water in ways they've never been linked up. Now, in the course of doing this, you're talking about putting tens of millions of people to work, of Americans to work, on the major infrastructure projects that are required to do this. The kinds of dam building, we've gone into detail elsewhere on the site with the sorts of what's going to be required to develop the reservoirs on this system, what's going to be required to develop the new canals on this system, what kind of pumping technology is going to be required to bring this through regions such as Montana over mountainous areas to be able to reach the Great American Desert. There's a lot required in this. All of that is jobs, not make work, but jobs where we're going to have to create a skill level in the population that no longer exists. If you look at the people who have the technical know-how to do this, they're all reaching upwards into their 70s, late 60s, mid 60s at the youngest. We're going to have to bring that capability back because it's been lost now for almost 2 entire generations. It's useful to have the NAWAPA map in mind. We've got Dave Christie's campaign here in Washington State in Seattle. Use NAWAPA to create a whole different map of what the heck Seattle means. Right now, people think of Washington, Seattle, it's really far up in the corner of the U.S., right, as far as you can go. From the standpoint of NAWAPA, Seattle is now going to be a major hub on this line that's going to connect all of Asia down into Africa, connect that across the Bering Strait, down through North America, all the way down to South America. Suddenly, there's a different meaning for Seattle, as there will be a major change in the significance of all of this territory here. The actual value and the significance of cities that already exist here and cities that have yet to be built in this whole region is transformed. It's a different kind of hub. The value of this region is determined not by its current state, but by the future state of the entire process. That's what we're talking about as a campaign here. Along with that, you've got certain capabilities there that are becoming dormant, like the aerospace capability there. The Bay Area, you've got Summer Shields as a candidate. Similar situation. You're talking about a major transformation for the state of California because it does share a large chunk of this great American desert. But then also the kinds of capabilities that exist here that we're talking about reclaiming, that right now are sort of operating in a completely isolated form. You've got major national laboratories there. You've got Lawrence Livermore. Regions which in the past have been used for amazing things, like the minds and the background that would launch that would be able to drive us into a breakthrough in fusion technology. You combine that with the fact that because of it's one time more significant and soon to be more significant role as a major port. You've got the ability for this to play a major role now, which will be transformed as we start to act more in the dialogue of civilizations that's required to launch the collaboration that we've referred to as a Four Powers collaboration. Keisha Rogers' campaign in Houston for Texas. Again, Texas, major recipient of the kinds of transformations we're talking about with NAWAPA. But at the same time, this is one of the major hubs of NASA, of the space program. You've got a major underutilized capability that's been steadily less and less utilized up to the present moment, where you've got Obama just taking the axe to our presence in space and NAWAPA. But you still have the minds there that would be capable of, if given a real mission, a real national mission like the one that NAWAPA represents, and then the extraterrestrial mission that will be the immediate follow-up. This is going to be one of the most central hubs in the country and in the world for being able to facilitate that. Bill Roberts, the region where he's running right now in Detroit, his campaign, it will be a recipient of certain of the NAWAPA projects. The direct recipient of NAWAPA itself, as I said, with the refilling of the Great Lakes, you're going to get a major transformation of that area there, which is going to, in fact, have an effect throughout this whole area here. In, for instance, the water supply for places like New York, a lot of these major areas here will be affected by transformations in the Great Lakes. You're going to need the entire industrial capability of that so-called Rust Belt brought back up to where it once was, and then retooled for something much higher. High-speed rail, but then really high-speed rail. To magnetically levitated rail, there'd be the same machine tools, same, just adjusting a few standard sizes and other things in their production, and they'd be immediately retooled to produce the vast majority of what we need to launch a program like that. Diane Sayre's campaign in New Jersey. Again, you're talking about a major transformation in the United States productive and industrial capability. Taking the New Jersey region, again, upgrading it heavily, and reconnecting it, as we'll see, to this entire network. And with a project just like this, you'd see a major economic transformation throughout the U.S., even in the regions that don't seem to be directly touched by the NAWAPA transformation itself. Same thing, a similar role to the role that you're going to see in both Keisha and Summers area here. You're going to see here in Rachel Brown's district, Massachusetts, which at one time had earned itself the name the Athens of America, had played a major role as a scientific center in connection with the space program and prior. We've got a capability there in terms of resources and research and education that in a program like this could be completely upturned, could be totally transformed. The campuses, the scientific capability, find the people who are a number of the more promising thinkers there, rescue them from the crap that they think they're supposed to kowtow to, and then move them as part of a much larger project. So now that brings up the question of what the overlay on this project is going to be, as far as this will give us a partial map. With the use of that kind of high-speed transit, how do you reconnect the U.S.? But as you notice, from the U.S. into Mexico, which will be a major recipient of NAWAPA, into Canada, up across the Bering Strait. So we start to now build a connection here where you can start to think now of, you can get a real mental image now of the human species transformation of the entire biosphere. That transformation launched here is going to open up regions that we've never touched. As you can kind of compare before and after picture of Canada and Alaska, that region is completely undeveloped. In fact, if you take a top-down view of the entire Earth and look at the Arctic region in general, we know very little, in fact, next to nothing about that area of the planet. We're behind as a species in expanding into that area, which we do know, first, from this view, you can see is the region that will link up and ensure our ability to control and economically develop the planet, but it's also our quickest attachment to our planet's interaction with phenomena off of the planet. which if you take a look at the polar region, you've got a major cosmic radiation interaction, but we see expressed as the aurora borealis, but which will connect us as the research facilities that we'll be able to set up in that region, connected to the industrial capability, is going to connect us to our extended sensorium, the satellite capability, which has been taken down in the recent period, but which we're now in a position to upgrade massively, to give a sense now of the human species existing not solely on the surface of the planet, but then throughout the entire solar system. So this is sort of where we're at. Like this is the kind of direction that we could move in right now, and that we need to move in as a response to, instead of where we've ended up in the recent period. So we can discuss that more, but that just sort of gives a rough outline of where we stand.